Hello team and welcome back to Transfer Winners and Losers, where we make sense of silly season. Joining me on today's show, it's Joseph Tomlinson. He's back from his 1 week exile. How's your time off? You feeling relaxed, recharged, ready to go?
Yes, mate. Very recharged and ready to go. Although I did see people's comments yesterday saying, shock, Joe's hiding Manchester United transfers on Sunday. But I can't have a week off. I can't even have a day off without the meme appearing on YouTube yet again. It's an absolute joke, quite frankly. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was really good, thank you. I went to a barbecue. I was absolutely useless yesterday, hungover, but did watch Spiderhead on Netflix, which I'd recommend.
Ooh.
Has Miles Teller in it, and I've been raving about Top Gun for the last week or so. He features in that as well, fast becoming one of my top 5 actors. But let's move on to our top talking point, which is, actually we've got two, is Gabriel Jesus / Frankie De Young. So yes, Tomlinson's return has ushered in more coverage of Manchester United. But let's start in North London, because Fabrizio Romano did tweet, didn't he, 12 hours ago, that Manchester City forward Gabriel Jesus has completed his move to Arsenal. He's agreed personal terms, signed a contract till 2027, and the fee has been reportedly set at £45 million. That actually makes the 25-year-old Arsenal's 5th joint highest transfer of all time. But I think we can all agree that represents fairly good value for both parties, really. Joe, with Nketiah being convinced to sign on, we assume he'd been promised a certain amount of minutes in that centre-forward position, given how protracted that situation became. And with the club still in hot pursuit of Rafinha, how is Arsenal's forward line going to work next season, in your opinion?
I don't care, and I love it. I absolutely love these moves. I think that Gabriel Jesus is one of the signings of the summer by Arsenal. I think this is a stunningly good bit of business at £45 million, especially given the fact he's worked with Mikel Arteta in the past, who knows exactly what he's going to get out of him. He's a press leader, he's a goal scorer, really good finisher. I think 8 goals, 8 assists last season, but only 1,900 minutes of football. And when he plays football, he tends to be involved in a positive way. I just love the Gabriel Jesus move to Arsenal. The Rafinha one is slightly more interesting. I kind of agree with you. I'm not too sure how that lines up, because on paper, pre-Rafinha, you're thinking Jesus through the middle, Martinelli off the left, Ødegaard in the hole, Saka off the right. You add Rafinha to that, add a bit of spice to the concoction, and I mean, it's starting to look scarily deep. It really is. And I think the fact that there's 5 substitutes from this coming season, Mikel Arteta is going to have a host of quality to play with. Towards the back end of last season, we saw Arsenal really struggling with a lack of depth, coming back to hurt them when significant injuries happened. They weren't able to recover. If it hadn't been for Eddie Nketiah having that really sort of bright spell of 5 or 6 games where he scored 4 goals, then I think they would have really struggled. So you add the likes of Rafinha in there, Gabriel Jesus in there, and it's just exceptional cover all the way across the forward line. I think I tweeted yesterday that if you add up the sort of 7 or 8 attackers that Arsenal will have at their disposal following the signing of Rafinha and Gabriel Jesus, as well as Fabio Vieira, the average age is just 22. So they're both adding top-level quality in the immediate now in Gabriel Jesus and Rafinha, and they're future-proofing themselves under Arteta. So I just think this is stunningly good business so far. Where have they got the money? Where have they found this like £150 million? I don't know. I don't care. Arsenal fans must be buzzing.
Yeah, my brain's still not really registered the signed Vieira yet, because I don't know much about him. Of course, he can play in that number 10 position as well, can't he? But like you just pointed out there, Gabriel Jesus did play a lot of football on the right wing for Manchester City. 13 games in all competitions on that right-hand side, where he got 7 goals and 5 assists last season. So that's where he was most productive. Only scored 1 of his goals, his 8 goals, when starting as a centre-forward in league play. But with Saka on the right, Rafinha potentially coming in, and Pepe still at the club, we assume that Gabriel Jesus is going to take that centre-forward role. And his link-up is decent. He can drop deep. He can facilitate in a way that Lacazette did effectively at various points last season. But I'm still not massively convinced about him at number 9. I do like this signing. I think it's solid value. I've defended the player in the past. He has been a little bit wasteful. I think underperformed against XG in 4 of his last 5 seasons. Does work hard for a forward, but not especially industrious compared to traditional wingers. Ball progression great again as a forward, but pretty standard against other wingers / attacking midfielders if we're going to profile him in that way. But I do see big upside. But he still doesn't fit neatly into the template of a centre forward or a right winger. So I am intrigued. I'm intrigued. But this is a guy who was replaced at centre forward by Ferran Torres at Manchester City.
But he fits the template of what Arteta wants from a centre forward, doesn't he? I think he's basically Lacazette on roids. Like he works quite nicely in there. And I was seeing a few quotes at the weekend. I remember Pep calling him the hardest working striker or the best presser, the most effective presser, I think the words were, in European football or something. I think for what Arteta wants from a number 9, he's almost perfect.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that doesn't... if he only gets another 8 goals, say, next season, doesn't matter so much if Martinelli gets 10, Saka gets another 12 to 15, right? But if
Lacazette got 2, didn't he? So
Lacazette he got a team high amount of assists though, didn't he? So he was quite productive in the creative department. But yeah, I like it. It's not setting my world on fire, but the price makes this fairly sensible, and hopefully he gets more minutes at Arsenal than he did at Manchester City, although 1,900, not too bad. Let's move on to something slightly more bizarre then. Manchester United's pursuit of Barcelona midfielder Frankie De Young. I mean, sounding him out as a target, not bizarre in itself, but when the Mirror are reporting, I think the Mirror are actually quoting the Sun, that Barca have offered United the opportunity to purchase De Jong for less than the 70 million quoted if they throw Maguire into the equation, you start to scratch your head, don't you? You start to think, what on earth is happening? Is this going to be a weird window or what? United have allegedly rejected the proposition though, Joe. What do you make of it all?
That's just utter nonsense, isn't it? I mean, that is just utter nonsense. First and foremost, I think there is a real overreaction amongst Manchester United fans online. Obviously, classic football Twitter overreacting about the Frankie De Jong saga and be going, well, if it's not done, sack it and move off. It's just like, well, if this is Erik ten Hag, the guy who has been chased for 6 months to try and get as a manager. They've got him as a manager. He comes in through the door and goes, look, my number 1 target, I have to have Frankie De Jong in the midfield. And United fans are like, well, 3 weeks in, lads, if we can't get him, sack it off, move on. Well, no, because if Erik ten Hag wants to sculpt his team around Frankie De Jong, then it's imperative we get him. And clearly we're trying to get him for the right fee. Barca, when this started to break, the reports are then wanting 100 million euros. That's kind of back down to 85 million euros. So obviously it's a big old disparity between what Man United want to pay, what Barcelona want to sell for. And it seems like they're going to meet in the middle at about that 65, 68 million pound mark, doesn't it? And if Erik ten Hag wants the player, for goodness sake, let's just get it done. Because too many times in the past, United have just signed players with no plan, no idea of how they want to play them. Erik ten Hag clearly has a plan of how he wants to use Frankie De Jong if he's the number 1 target. He's worked with in the past. So I say take your time. Let's get the right deal. We've had it in the past. I remember people saying the same thing when we were going to bid 120 million for Jadon Sancho. 12 months later, we got him for about 75, didn't we? So I think, take your time, get it right in this window, of course. But I have no issue with the way United have dealt with this, to be honest with you. My bigger issue with it is that United have to be getting other targets done simultaneously, because at the moment it feels like it's just De Jong, and it's like once that's happened, then we'll focus on other targets. You've got to work simultaneously, for goodness sake. You can't just be focused on one deal at a time. But either way, get De Jong through the door, because he is who Ten Hag wants. And for the first time in a long time, a manager has a clear identity of how he wants to play football and who he wants in that team to make that happen. So everybody just relax and let's get the deal done, for goodness sake.
Talking of other signings then, what do you make of the Christian Eriksen conundrum? He's picking your Brentford. Confident he'll pick United over Brentford?
Not massively. I
think
the
mighty have fallen.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that, isn't it? It's easy to get the jabs in, but I think, especially with Christian Eriksen, I think this is probably a decision that comes down to more than just football for Eriksen, who has had an incredibly tumultuous last few years. His family have lived and are extremely settled in London. His kids are in school in London. I'm sure he has things on his brain that are bigger than just football, effectively, is what I'm trying to say. So whether or not he wants to uproot his life entirely, I think people forget that footballers are people as well, just for that 1-2 year contract on Manchester United that's probably more lucrative, but no guarantee of success. I'm not overly convinced. I think that Brentford offer a very good option, very stable position. So I think it's probably 50-50 between the two clubs, to be honest.
The idea that of this happening, of someone picking between, I don't know, a Brentford equivalent a decade ago and Manchester United, totally unfathomable. And I know you've been fairly reasonable about it there, but I mean, if United can't sell, then they're a new sporting project with Ten Hag at the helm over.
But you've also got to think he's probably not going to be a starter, is he? Like, he comes in and what do United sell him? They probably say, look, you're going to be back up to Bruno, but you're going to be on big wages and we're going to be competing for the top 6. It's a long-term project. It's not going to be changed overnight either, he's thinking. I don't know. I think it's a much more difficult pick than people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, and obviously let's give some credit to Thomas Frank and the way that Brentford conduct themselves on a day-to-day, because they're clearly a very well-run club. But I mean, compared to Manchester United, I mean they struggle to fill a 17,000-seat stadium. My mind just still boggles that it's not an automatic yes to Manchester United. Let's move ahead then to something equally as bizarre, which is Cristiano Ronaldo to Chelsea. Now, 2 weeks ago, he was linked with Bayern Munich. I ignored those rumours. He was linked to Chelsea last week. I ignored those rumours. But now this one has gained a little bit of momentum in the mainstream media. Let's have a quick look at it.
Lots and lots of noise in the past 24 hours concerning Cristiano Ronaldo. Chelsea's new owner, Todd Boehly, had a meeting with Cristiano Ronaldo's agent, Jorge Mendes. Now, in isolation, people are thinking, what's going on here? But you've got to remember, Jorge Mendes represents a number of players as well. Was Cristiano Ronaldo discussed? Probably he was discussed. But the fact of the matter is, it's no real surprise that Chelsea's new owner is having a meeting with one of the most powerful agents in world football. We're in a transfer window after all. But one thing is certain is that Manchester United are adamant that Cristiano Ronaldo simply is not for sale.
All right, then, as this also involves Manchester United, Joe, let's garner your thoughts on the matter. What are you thinking?
Well, it feels a little bit like Ronaldo's agents trying to hurry Manchester United up into business, doesn't it? It kind of feels like, Ronaldo, all the quotes behind it are, well, you're not happy with Manchester United's transfer dealings. And obviously, this feels like a move to put pressure on the Manchester United board to start getting some business done and dusted, which I'm sure a lot of Manchester United fans will be delighted about. Look, I don't see him joining Chelsea at all. I think I would be massively surprised, given Manchester United have no strikers other than Ronaldo on the books, really. And Chelsea, I don't see that happening after the sale of Romelu Lukaku to bring Ronaldo in at 37, pay a fee for him to get it over the line. I know that Todd Boehly is now the supremo of Chelsea. He's the font of all Chelsea. Marina's gone, Bruce Buck's gone. This morning we saw Petr Cech go. So he is now the interim sporting director, the interim chairman, and the interim technical director. I've never seen anything like it. But he's obviously working much more closely with Thomas Tuchel now. It's very much a change in the sort of philosophy behind the scenes. I was reading Matt Law's report in the Telegraph this morning, who said he wants to align himself more with Liverpool's model, where Jurgen Klopp has slightly more saying and pulling power than some of the technical directors at the club, which I'm not sure is necessarily true, given, Julian Ward and Michael Edwards have done such a fantastic job there. But either way, it seems it's very much Thomas Tuchel and Todd Boehly working side by side to identify and bring in targets. Probably one of the reasons Romelu Lukaku was sanctioned to leave was the fact that those two are working much more closely together, and Thomas Tuchel kind of went, look, I don't want him. So it's going to be a really interesting summer for Chelsea, because, United are getting battered, but Chelsea have got work to do. And it feels like they're not as far down the line with a Frankie De Young as Manchester United are, for instance, when they've got to sign 2 centre-backs, centre-mid, probably a striker as well now Rom's gone. It feels like they've got a lot of work to do, and Todd Boehly has put himself in a pressurised position.
Yeah, and it looks like they might be losing players before they gain any more as well, but we'll touch upon that in just a second. Let's move on to our winners then. And I couldn't really separate City and Forest. Well, I could, because one has signed Haaland. But I wanted to talk about Forest as well a little bit, because we've touched upon the big boys an awful lot in the last week or so. But let's cover that Calvin Phillips transfer firstly, because they look to have secured the England midfielder, don't they, for roughly £45 million. Now, he was injured for a large part of last season, and when he did play, I think he made 18 starts in total. He wasn't at his very best, but was still influential in the run-in, helping the club secure their Premier League status. I think Leeds have also signed 18-year-old City prospect Darko Gyabi for £5 million in a separate deal as well. So there's clearly a little bit of you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. Maybe that'll be the case of some other academy prospects moving forward. But Joe, this still feels very cheap, doesn't it? Given that Phillips had 2 years left on his deal.
I think this feels really cheap. I think I tweeted on the weekend this feels a bit of a bargain for Manchester City, especially given that the £5 million youngster was included. So pre-add-ons, you drop that down to £37 million for Calvin Phillips, who was England's Player of the Year last year, incredibly influential in the national team, unbelievably influential for Leeds. Leeds fans on my Twitter timeline absolutely rioting over that fee, given that Ben White left Brighton after, 12 months of Premier League football for £50 million, and Calvin Phillips is more senior than him, he's more experienced than him, he's probably more vital to Leeds than Ben White was to Brighton. I think that they have dealt quite cheap here. I'm going to be very interested to see how Calvin Phillips fits in at Manchester City, because I don't think he's quite the direct replacement for Fernandinho in the mould of Fernandinho that people think he is, and I'm interested to see how much game time he gets at Man City. Like, does he play alongside Rodri? Does he play when Rodri's not available? Like, is this going to be a bit of a Nathan Ake situation? I'm not too sure. Either way, what I am sure about is that this is, given that the English tax exists, how they've managed to get this deal done so cheaply, I'm really shocked at.
Yeah, I think how much game time he gets is going to be the key thing for him moving forward here, because there's no question that of Rodri's place in the starting lineup is that had an absolutely belting campaign. So maybe Pep Guardiola will move forward with a 4-2-3-1. Who knows? Yes. Now, to replace him, Leeds are allegedly going after RB Leipzig's Tyler Adams. So we'll keep an eye on how that unfolds. But City have also, according to various reports on Twitter, agreed personal terms with Brighton's left-back Marco Cucurella, who had an unbelievable debut campaign for Potter's men. Just a fee left to be thrashed out, but that's thought to be approaching 40 to 50, isn't it? Which would be substantial. I remember flagging him as a loanee at Eibar from Barcelona about 5 years ago on how to fix. His ascendancy has been ridiculous.
Mate, if that
since
happens,
turning out
City have no holes
like
in the
Eibar.
team. City have no holes. Like, where is the hole in the team? Like, to have Cucurella as a backup to Cancelo, like Phillips as a backup to Rodri.
But also, does that make
5
Zinchenko
subs.
available for 20 to 25? And I know he can deputise in midfield as well, or at left back. But if that makes Zinchenko available, he might be a really, really interesting pickup for one of the chasing pack. Anyway, let's move on. I was going to touch upon Raheem Sterling's potential exit, but we covered that quite extensively on last week's winners and losers. We'll keep an eye on that deal. Let's move on to Forest then. Because that squad needs major surgery, doesn't it, to become Premier League ready after their surprise promotion. I mean, they only spent £4.6 million getting promoted last season, with loan players the ones proving hugely influential, the difference makers, let's say. However, they have made a good start. 24-year-old Nigerian striker Taiwo Awoniyi, I want to say, has signed for £18 million from Union Berlin, closing on Dean Henderson as well, at least according to The Athletic. So, Tomlinson, what do you make of those two transfers? A good start, right?
Yeah, a good start, but lots of work to do. Like we said on Sunday Vibes when we were talking about the best of the rest a couple of weeks ago, I think 6 of the starting 11 with the most minutes last season have now left the club. Most of them were loanees, of course, so they're going to have to do a lot of surgery to this side to sort of become even remotely competitive. Good start with Awoniyi, I agree with you. Haven't seen loads of him, but the sort of stuff that I've read and the highlights I've watched online of him look very promising. Almost looks a little bit like a Keenan Davis upgrade, doesn't he? Finally caught fire last season. He's had a lot of loan moves throughout his career since leaving Liverpool as a teenager in 2015, hasn't he? Wasn't particularly impressive at Mainz, wasn't particularly impressive at Ghent, but then last season, 15 goals, much better, and they are going to need goal scorers because they cannot just rely on Brennan Johnson, can they, to score in the Premier League week in, week out. In net, so surprised Bryce Samba's gone. I don't really understand his decision making there, having been at the club for years and pushed for Premier League promotion, got Premier League promotion, then gone, okay, I'm going back to Lens or going to Lens or wherever he's going to end up. Like, what's the thought process there? I don't understand it, but either way, I feel like they're upgrading to get Dean Henderson in. I think he's better than Bryce Samba. He's proven that he can do it in a relegation dogfight with Sheffield United, where I think he was their player of the season potentially, or a candidate for their player of the season before returning to Manchester United. Hasn't played an awful lot of football, but is very capable in net. So I'm not too bothered about that one, but got to get a Jed Spence replacement in, got to get a James Garner replacement in, because of course they can't now sign James Garner, given they've already got one loanee from Manchester United in Dean Henderson, not able to sign a second loanee because of the rule changes in the Premier League there to loans, so they're going to have to try and identify another midfielder to bring through the door. You know, it's going to be a long window, and that recruitment team's going to be under pressure because they, you know, I think they're probably quite interested in Moussa Niakhaté, aren't they, as well? Levi Cole will potentially, but I'm very intrigued to see what happens here.
Yeah, really intriguing. And apparently, Forest are paying his wages in full as well, which would make him the top paid player at the club by a distance. Now, if various reports are led to be believed, that's 100k a week. Lewis Graven, currently the top paid player on 25. So that is a substantial commitment in wages. But I think if he hadn't pissed away the last 2 years of his career on the bench at Manchester United, he would potentially be England #1 heading into the World Cup this November. So they've got a real top caliber player there, and you know, if they can shore up that defence, I back them to maybe surprise the rest of the Premier League, or at least be in contention with survival. Right, let's move on then to our losers. I was just going to put Aaron Ramsey in there, but it's a bit of a non-story. He was basically wanted by Pirlo, who's recently taken charge of a Turkish team called Fatih Karagümrük. And club president Suleiman Herman recently said, we practically reached an agreement, but then we gave up last minute because Ramsey's camp were holding out for things we didn't want to give. So Cardiff now look favourites to land his signature. I mean, he's got a year left on his Juventus contract, but if he wants to play football, he's going to have to go, and it's looking like an increasingly small pool of viable destinations. I've thrown in Levi Colwill. And not because I think he's a loser, but according to various reports, Chelsea closing in on Juventus defender De Ligt. They've not given up on Jules Koundé yet. And as a result, Fabrizio Romano has sort of intimated on Twitter that they may be willing to consider offers for Colwill with people like Leicester, Palace, Brighton and Forest, all really, really interested after his really promising season on loan at Huddersfield. Now part of me just thinks, why are you rushing to make the same mistake again after Gehi, after Tomori? Do you think this would make them losers if they cashed in on him, or is there a right fee for Colwill here?
This is Chelsea's standard operating procedure, mate. This is like yet another of their superstar young academy prospects out the door. Over the last 4 years, we've seen Tino Livramento, who was the best player in the academy, leave. We've seen Gehi go, Tomori go, amongst others. And I think if Levi Colwill went, Chelsea fans would be up in arms, because I have never seen a player that I've not watched be so hyped by a fan base in the academy. Like, they absolutely love Levi Colwill. Had a great season at Huddersfield, and I think a lot of them were expecting him to come in and have some sort of impact. It's the same with Ian Maatsen, Zach has not stopped talking about Ian Maatsen for 6 months, and now it looks like he's going to permanent to Feyenoord. Like, what is going on? I understand that they potentially need some cash, but is there no other way of generating cash than selling your two hottest academy prospects in order to fund a move for Matthias de Ligt that's probably not going to happen because he's got a €120 million buyout clause and Koundé's going to end up at Barcelona? I don't really get it. Surely there are other players in your side, Ziyech and Pulisic, and potentially options in the midfield, Bakayoko still got a year on his contract. Do they need to be selling Levi Cole? I don't get it. I just don't understand it. Surely learn from your mistakes of the past. But this is Todd Burley's ship now, and he does what he wants. The Americans do what they want, mate.
Mate, it's weird, isn't it? This is a team that we viewed as pretty complete last season after a really emphatic transfer window, or a couple of great transfer windows, and now it feels like no one's really safe. Maybe apart from Mason Mount, I don't know, Kai Havertz, Thiago Silva, not even Mendy in goal. Timo Werner and Christian Pulisic were apparently available as make-weights for the De Ligt deal. And these are two £50 million plus signings over the last 18 months, 2 years. Well, obviously a little bit further back for Pulisic. But yeah, you get what I'm trying to say here. Just mad. Let's move on though to our moment of the week. And I've only got one suggestion down here, and on the theme of Chelsea, let's give Chelsea fans some positive news. Emma Hayes getting an OBE, fair play. Let's hear from her now.
I feel so extremely fortunate. I've represented a football club that I adore, and a group of players and staff that have absolutely done so much for us to be in positions to win lots of trophies over the years. It's been brilliant.
And this was announced at the start of the year, and that came off the back of the domestic quadruple and reaching the Champions League final as well. Do you rank that as your greatest success?
No, my son is my greatest success, and there's never ever going to be anything that comes close to that. While I love winning, family and health are the most important things.
When it comes to football, how do you reflect on the service that you've given to this game?
You know, to think about it as a service seems wrong. It's a love, it's a passion. I've been given a gift and that gift is being put in positions to be able to use that influence, and I know myself it won't stop here. I want to continue to grow the game, as does everybody who's involved with it, including that helicopter. And I listen, I'm really grounded, and I always feel really lucky to do what I do.
Right, that's it then for this week's transfer winners and losers. Obviously, we'll be keeping you up to date every Monday moving forward until the window shuts. Joseph, I know you've been off, but have you seen any videos, clocked any Football Daily stuff that you think people should go and watch right now?
We had Sunday Vibes yesterday, didn't they? So I suggest going and watching that because, you know, as ever, good chat. But again, just it maddens me. It maddens me. The abuse for not being on one episode. I can't have a week off, Chris.
Yeah, well, keep it coming, guys. Great work. And like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, and we'll catch you next time.